Róisín Shortall, thank you very much for coming into us. It's nearly 2 years since you left the government now. Has anything surprised you the way in which things have turned out in health over the last 2 years in terms of budget overruns, the delay in free GP care and UHI?
I think I'd have to say no. I wasn't really surprised at the point when I left almost 2 years ago. There certainly were serious concerns about the ongoing budget overruns and no plan to contain those at all. And similarly in relation to the promised reform, no roadmap there in relation to that. And it's one of the things that I would have certainly tried to do at times in the department to try and get James Riley to commit to paper how he saw the future shape of the health board or the health service, and we never actually saw that. So my concern had always been, and I brought these concerns to Eamon Gilmore, was that the health service would go into free fall, that there wouldn't be a plan, there'd be huge uncertainty, and at the same time the health service would be expected to deliver life-saving services. And in many ways I suppose that's what happened, and there was huge uncertainty created and nobody working in the service really knew what the future held, and that created a very unhealthy situation.
He's gone now, he's been moved out of health. Were you surprised that he was reshuffled elsewhere?
I wasn't surprised that he was moved out of health.
Were you surprised he was kept in cabinet?
I was really, yeah. Well, he's a very inexperienced politician and he had created a huge amount of difficulty for the government. I mean, health should have been a real plus for this government. There was the potential to do that. It should have been one of their flagship projects, and it turned out to be quite disastrous for them. And I think a lot of the blame for that can be laid at James Riley's feet. And I think the public would generally concur with that view. And for that reason, generally, if a minister does a lot of damage, they take the rap for that. But that didn't happen in this case. I suppose there was the complication of him being deputy leader of Fine Gael, and I suppose Enda Kenny not taking the hard decisions.
Sounds like you don't have much time for him. When was the last time you spoke to James Riley?
Oh, it was the night before I resigned.
You literally haven't said a word to him since?
No, I haven't. I haven't really, no.
Has he reached out to you at all?
No, not at all.
What do you think of Leo Varadkar's performance so far? He's not been there that long, but he seems to be very vocal in talking about a lot of the things that are the main issues in health at the moment.
I think he's had quite a good start, really. I think the politics of it have been reasonably good. Now, there's few things. I think Leo is, I think he's an able politician, and I think he's a straight talker, and they're two very good qualities. He's inherited a department that has very serious problems, whole range of problems, but at the same time I think there's a lot of goodwill for him. I think the public were very keen to see a new person in at the top of the Department of Health, and I think all of that goodwill is there because we all need him to do well in the Department of Health. Health is such an important area for everybody, and there's a lot of support there for him. He made that statement to the Irish Independent, at an early stage. He was setting out a stall, and in some ways, obviously, the politics of that were good. I would very much welcome the fact that he has brought some, sense of steadiness. He's steadied the ship in many ways in terms of the future of the health service, and this crackpot plan that there had been to abolish the HSE next year, caused a lot of that uncertainty. And he said, for the time being, the HSE is going to remain in place until there is a replacement delivery organisation for the health service, and I think that's a good thing. He's also recognised the very important work that the 100,000 people in the HSE do on a daily basis.
Is he someone you could have worked with?
I think so, yeah. I've always had a lot of time for him.
Do you regret not having the opportunity to work with him?
Well, it's always very nice to have an opportunity to work in government and to actually implement policies. I would very much like to have done that. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible with James Riley. But yes, it would have been very nice to play a part in government, and I'd be very interested in doing that at some point in the future.
Do you think ultimately he'll turn out to be a better health minister than James Riley?
Well, hopefully he will. you know, health is a difficult area, there's no doubt about that, but at the same time it's not impossible, and I sometimes object to this portrayal of the department as Angola. You know, every other European country can have a properly functioning health service. There's no reason why we can't, and you know, it's something that the public deserve, and it's a matter of, I think, going in there and putting the patient first. I mean, that may sound simplistic, but the patient needs to be put first, and if you start off on that premise, I think a lot of other things follow. The danger is, and the problem has been in the past, I think, that too many ministers have gone in and tried to juggle the vested interests, and health is full of vested interests, but you know, it should be about the patient, and I think a minister who does that can't go too far wrong. I think it's a very difficult job at the moment because the Labour Party has come through a few years that have been exceptionally bruising. I think, you know, they've lost a huge amount of support and goodwill from the public. They've disappointed very seriously. And I think it's virtually impossible to turn that around this side of a general election. I think Joan has a lot of good qualities. But, you know, it is the party that took a lot of bad decisions, I think, since the last election, let people down, went back and broke a lot of promises that it had made prior to the last election. And I don't think that kind of damage can be repaired in the space of 18 months or whatever. I think she will be an improvement, and there'll probably be some bit of a lift in the polls. But, you know, I think serious damage has been done, and very often it takes a general election to actually purge that sense of I suppose, being let down or betrayal that people feel. And it's very reminiscent, I suppose, of what happened in the 90s, where the Labour Party had been in government from 92 to 97, left the economy and the country in reasonably good shape, but people were still very angry with decisions that the Labour Party had made and took it out on them in 97. And I think the likelihood is the same will happen the next time.
Do you think Eamon Gilmore should have left sooner to kind of stem the tide of support ebbing away from the party?
Well, clearly he should have, but very often people who are in positions of power lose touch, I think, with the public mood and are in denial in many ways, and it's not until there is an actual election and seats are hemorrhaged that, you know, they accept the reality of the situation.
Have you given any thought to rejoining Labour in the wake of the changes in the party? Joan Burton's made very clear that she won't be approaching people like yourself or other Labour people who've left, Labour TDs, former Labour TDs, but would you consider going back?
No, no, I've no plans to do that. I mean, you know, it's still the party that I left, and the reasons for my leaving are still there. And it is a party that has broken promises and has taken some very poor decisions, I think, over the space of the last 3 years. I mean, you know, things come to mind like, obviously, the cronyism in health. The Labour Party is expected by its supporters to stand up to that kind of thing, and didn't do that, defended James Riley in relation to cronyism, and indeed were part of it themselves, Eamon Gilmore and other ministers. And I suppose another very stark example of what's expected of the Labour Party would be, say, in the justice area, and the treatment of whistleblowers by Alan Shatter. Equally, the failure of the Taoiseach to explain what happened that night when he met with Brian Purcell, and, you know, that meeting resulting then in the Garda Commissioner resigning. So those kind of issues, I suppose what you could call ethical issues, are ones that are very important to a lot of Irish people.
Well, what about you, though? I mean, have you thought about it? Have you considered it? You said you have no plans to. That's not exactly ruling it out definitively.
Well, I've no plans to for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
You know, what the Labour Party has been doing in the last few years has been very disappointing to the public, but very disappointing to me as a
Do you think you
lifetime member.
Rejoin before the general election, perhaps?
I wouldn't see that happening under any circumstances.
Talking about that, would you be running as an independent?
Yes, I will. That's my intention.
Okay, it's your intention. But do you think that if a new political party was established between now and then, you should be interested in joining it?
I'm very open to the idea of a new political party. I think there's a big gap there. I think it was extraordinary at the last election there in the local and European elections, the number of people who didn't know who they were going to vote for. And there's still a lot of people like that who, have been let down by one or other of the parties in government, or indeed have lost confidence in some of the opposition parties. And more people are saying we need a new party. I think
it's not just disillusionment with politics in general.
it is, yeah, it is.
A political party isn't the way to go.
Well, politics is very fundamental to our life and to our country, and as yet we haven't come across any other way of changing our society, and the democratic system is the system that we have there. So it's about politicians, and some politicians who organise in political parties, and I think there's a strong appetite from people for something new. A party, I suppose, that would espouse the values that the Labour Party would have espoused, and have strong values in relation to equality.
Sinn Féin, maybe.
But yeah, and to a large extent, yes, their policies are good on the whole equality front. I don't think they're trusted by the majority of Irish people, and I think their association with paramilitary activity is too recent for a lot of people to stomach. So I think there is an appetite for a party there that would espouse those kind of values of equality, but that would also value honesty and integrity in public life, and that would believe that if you say something, you should follow through with it. That where there's more emphasis put on substance rather than style. So I believe there is a demand for a party like that. I'm not sure that it's going to happen this side of an election. I think there's a number of independent TDs that would be interested in doing that, but I don't think it's going to happen just within Leinster House. I think there's potential for it to happen, certainly. But I think there are lots of people outside of, Leinster House that could contribute to that. No, I mean, I've very little in common with that group, I have to say. They're from the Fine Gael stable. I think socially and economically they are conservative, and I wouldn't have much in common with them. I mean, I do admire people who take a stand, who are principled, whether I agree with that principle or not. But I think that's an important thing, and integrity is important in public life. But on economic issues and social issues, I wouldn't agree with them.
You were talking to me off camera about we're on the fourth floor of the former Labour Party general election headquarters in Golden Lane, and you were talking to me earlier about you sat in the room where the Every Little Hurts ad was presented to you. What did you think when we saw that ad?
Well, the decision had been taken and the spaces had been booked in the media. Excuse me. I thought it showed desperation. And I suppose in the heat of an election where it was felt at the time that support was slipping away and there was a real prospect of an overall Fine Gael majority. Some of the advisors to the party leader, thought this was a very clever move. I did think it was desperation, and I did think it was dangerous. And
did you say anything now, did you? Or did you?
Well, the decisions had been taken at that stage. I was shown it after the event. I wasn't in that inner circle that would have decided to go with these things. But it was in the heat of an election, and those chickens have come home to roost now in a very serious way, very damaging way for the Labour Party.
Do you think the Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act is fundamentally flawed? Or?
I do, yeah. I thought that at the time. I mean, it doesn't address the
Do you think
most...
it should be repealed now?
Yes, I do, yeah.
But what should be put in place?
Well, I think we need a constitutional amendment. I think the kind of issues that arise that people are concerned about, and where the middle ground in Irish society would support the availability of abortion need to be catered for. I'm of the view that, well, we know that this is a very polarised debate, but I think the vast majority of people hold the middle ground. They're neither, strongly pro-life nor strongly pro-choice. I think there are certain circumstances where most people believe a woman should have a right to access an abortion, in circumstances like rape and incest, where there's fetal abnormality. I think in circumstances like that, a clear majority of people favour a woman having a right to access an abortion, and the Constitution doesn't allow for that. And I think we need a constitutional amendment. I believe that last year's legislation is flawed, because it doesn't it doesn't cater for the demand that's there, but equally it creates a very invidious situation for medics, being in a situation where there's a distinction made between terminating the life of the unborn and terminating a pregnancy. So, you know, the kind of points that Sam Coulter-Smith was making in relation to the moral dilemma of an early delivery of a healthy baby, knowing that that early delivery through caesarean or an induced delivery will result more than likely in a child having very serious challenges and not being wanted, and you know, who's going to take responsibility for that baby whose problems have been caused by public policy. So, you know, they're very, very serious issues that have been raised. I think, you know, there's an attempt made to box this issue off, and quite clearly that can't happen. It can't happen in the context of the existing constitutional provision, and it is inevitable that this issue will have to be addressed again. I think it's unfortunate that this government is not going to do it. I don't know, who knows what the future will hold. I think
though, do you think there'll be an opportunity at some point in the future for you to be?
There may well be. There may well be. I think politics is in a state of flux at the moment. To a large extent, it's moribund, and I think the future of all of the existing parties, bar Sinn Féin, I think, is open to question. And I think we could have a new alignment, possibly this side of an election, but certainly after the next general election. I think, you know, that could throw up a whole lot of new possibilities in relation to Irish politics, and it won't be before time. I think we're seeing the beginning of the end of civil war politics, and I think we're starting to see a realignment, probably along left-right grounds, but as I say, it's in a state of flux at the moment. There's a big demand for something new, and I think it's quite possible that that will come.
Okay. Róisín Shortall, thank you very much.
Thank you.